Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the February 2023 meeting of the West Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency. As usual, and I think for the last time, pursuant to Government Code Section 54953, as amended by Assembly Bill 361, and due to the state of emergency declared by the governor on March 4th, 2020, members of the West Sacramento Area Flood Control Board and staff will participate in this meeting via teleconference to reduce the spread of COVID-19. Members of the public have been invited to watch via live stream or via telecommunication, which information was listed on the agenda. So we'll start today with the roll call.
Chair Ramos.
Here.
Vice Chair Alcala.
Here.
Director Sulpizio Hole.
Here.
Thank you. All are present.
All right, thank you. We'll move on. General Administration, Part 1. Our first item, 1A, is presentation by the public on matters not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of WSAFCA. So is there anyone that is online that would wish to bring up a matter now, or have we received any communications to that effect?
So there are no comments beforehand that were received from the public, and I invite anyone now to speak regarding any matters not on the agenda.
Hi, my name is Nicole Sears, and I'm a resident of West Sacramento. I live in the neighborhood of Bright, and I'm concerned about the levee behind the water resources maintenance yard up there. It's a wide levee, and I know that it's slated to be improved, but it is eroding pretty significantly, and I just am wanting to know the schedule on that. When do we anticipate that'll be done? The pictures are disturbing. I have some that I can show. be of interest, but
if it's okay for staff to kind of give some information now, and obviously they can follow up with you. I think I know that that area is the actual maintenance is performed by the state of California.
Yeah.
So it's not the local, RD 900. But,
right.
Yep. But
other than that, they fill it with sand every year, and it looks like it's going to wash away. This year, the actual pavement that on the yard started to cut open. You have cloudy puddles on the roadside. It's pretty concerning from my layperson's opinion. So
okay. I'll just ask staff, is there anything they can add, and then or make sure we can follow up with Nicole, give her the details. I know there's exploratory ongoing now. It'll be a core project in the future, and I think that is high on the list of areas that are going to be addressed, but I don't have a timeline myself.
Yeah, Nicole, I'll check in the chat. I'll give you my phone number. You can give me a call. We can talk in more depth, but that reach is currently under design by the Corps.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so I think we anticipate going to construction within 2 years.
Okay. I don't know if any of you are, if somebody should check it out. I understand there's nobody from Water Resources that sits on this advisory board, or
no.
Yeah. Okay. It's pretty bad. So give it a look. That's all I had. Then I'll get your number and we'll follow up for the meeting.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you bringing it to our attention, and we'll make sure it's addressed from our standpoint.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. Any other comments at all, Jen? Any other members of the public that wish to come on and speak?
I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to item 1B, report out on closed session.
Good morning, Chair Ramos. The board met in closed session on the 2 items listed on this morning's closed session agenda. The board took no reportable action, and that's the report.
Okay, thank you. Item 1C, monthly and year-to-date revenue and expenses reports. I believe, Jen, that's normally yourself that presents it.
Yes. Good morning, board members and staff. I will be reporting out on the revenue and expenditures for the month of December 2022. In our O&M Fund 870, the beginning balance was $3.86 million. The agency received $159,000 from special tax assessments. Assessments totaled $66,000, making the ending position for Fund 870 approximately $4 million. In our CIP Fund 871, the beginning balance was $6.36 million. There is no revenue. Expenditures totaled $185,000, making Fund 871 ending position at $6.18 million. At the end of the month, the combined cash position was $10.18 million. And as of February 7th, the agency's cash position was $8.71 million. So the agency did receive the first installment of the 2023 flood assessments in the amount of $2,755,068. And that's a 2.2% increase over last year's first installment. So at the time, finance did not enter this amount into the books yet, so it's not reflected in the current cash position in that table in the flood program updates, but it is now in our books. Other than that, I have nothing else to report. Please let me know if you have any other questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, we'll move on to item 1D, regular board meeting schedule. I'll hand that over to the General Manager, Mr. Fabian, to give us a briefing.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair Ramos. So as you had mentioned earlier on in the meeting, this will be the last remote meeting for the agency, and we'll need to return to in-person. Our previous meetings, well, the current day and time is the third Thursday of the month, closed session 8:30, open session at 9. The proposal for the board to consider this morning would be pushing that time back by 1/2 hour. So a closed session at 9, in person, room 238 at City Hall, followed by open session at 9:30 in the council chambers at City Hall. So that's the recommendation by staff, and I'll turn that over to you and the board to deliberate and provide any comments or recommendation.
So it'll still be the third Thursday, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, okay. Well, I'll open it up to the my other board members as to whether that works with their schedules. And I think that's something that would be fine with myself. So I'll let you in. And do we need to have a formal motion to establish that as our regular board meeting time? Okay.
Yes.
This is
Yeah.
Norma, and that time works really well for me. Verna?
I will say that the time does not work very well for me. Mornings can be very difficult with young children and getting them fed and clothed and off to daycare. Since it works for the majority of the board, I will work very hard I think that will be March to be there on time. But I'd love the space to be able to revisit this in a couple months if this early morning meeting does not work for me as a parent with young children.
Okay, Greg, is there, as far as scheduling at City Hall, there is a later time available, and whether that would work for Norma the same and be better for Verna? I don't know.
I do have to go to work. So
Okay. Gotcha.
all right.
So it's either this time for mornings, or we'd have to look for late afternoon, evening type thing, huh?
Yeah, and I get out of work
Yeah.
at 5. Actually, I work even later. So
Yeah. Well, Verna, if you're willing to give it a try and see, we can do that. There is, and Greg, you can, not Greg, but Ralph, you can do this with the new regulations. There is ability, a little more flexibility to participate via phone or whatever, but you got to come up with a legitimate reason, which you have one, but we can see how it works out going forward, I guess.
Greg, are we allowed to do hybrid if a majority of the board, like, let's say Tom and I attend the meeting physically, and let's say one morning Verna can't, is there a possibility of doing a hybrid type of meeting?
So, and I don't know if Ralph wants to speak to this or if Ralph wants to correct me if I get off track here, but a discussion was had yesterday about this very issue and I paid close attention. My understanding is there's an exception to the meeting in person, and it's kind of an extreme event exception. So a board member can declare, if you will, that I need to participate remotely. And we can establish and have that set up ahead of time to invoke in the case that happens. But we'll also have to be able to, we have to provide the same opportunity to members of the public. And so we would have to, in advance, have in our agenda and materials a link that the public could use, as well as a board member, that we would activate only if needed, and it would need to be very clearly spelled out that way in our agenda. So the short answer is, I think, yes, we could do it. The logistics are a little bit wonky. I'm pretty sure we could work it out. It's just nobody's done it yet. So there's just going to be walking through that. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
I'd like to add that the exception that would allow for that type of participation in the meeting is very limited, both in the grounds that can be used to participate in it remotely and the number of times you can do it in a year. So it is truly an emergency, and the legislation caps the number of times you can use it. So the general rule is you should plan on attending each of the meetings in person. And if a true emergency comes up, contact me and we can work through it and see if we meet the exception. But the general rule is going to be in-person meetings.
And Ralph, it may be worth exploring how we might tee this up on our agendas. So in the event that this were to happen, we have a means of holding the meeting and doing it remotely as well.
Very well, we can work on that.
Okay. Well, then I guess I will make the motion that we establish our regularly scheduled meeting of WSAFCA, a monthly meeting of WSAFCA, to the third Thursday of each month, beginning at 9:30 a.m. with closed session if necessary beforehand.
I second. I'll call us seconds.
Okay. It's been first and seconded. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Ramos,
Aye.
Vice Chair Alcala.
Aye.
Director Sulpizio Hole.
Aye.
All right, thank you. I
Okay.
have it.
All right, thank you very much. On to our consent agenda, which has just one item this time, which is the approval of our January 19 minutes. If it's been reviewed, if anybody has any questions or comments, additions, deletions, if not, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Colin moves.
I'll second.
Okay, and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Ramos,
Aye.
Vice Chair Alcala.
Aye.
Director Sulpicio Hull.
Aye.
Thank you. I have it again.
Okay, thank you very much. On to our regular agenda, which is item 3A, West Sacramento WSAFCA project updates. Greg or Paul or whoever today.
Yep. Thank you, Chair Ramos. I'll kick it off. So I provided, or the staff and I provided a little bit, some additional information on some of the items that we have been reporting out fairly regularly. So I'm going to go over some of that and then tell you all where we are with the federal project implementation. So the credit package for Southport that was submitted back in September of 2022. We'll put this in future meetings or future reports to the board, but I just wanted to give you an idea of the value. And that credit package value is $116.6 million. And that's currently under review by the Corps. It could take up to 2 years to approve, but certainly as it passes milestones or approval at the district and then works its way up the chain, we'll make sure to report out as those milestones occur. On to the federal project. I added to the project partnership agreement, which was executed back in September of 2022, that the Corps had requested the first 5% cash request, and that was based on the FY22 appropriation. And that cash request was for $1.33 million, and that's required of the non-federal sponsor, which is WSAFCA and the state. And right now, DWR has agreed to now and for the immediate future anyways, to respond to those cash requests. So we anticipate them to be cutting the check to the Corps for that $1.3 million. On the Yolo Bypass East Levee South project, right now that's scheduled to go out to bid February 21st. The Corps, believe it or not, is ahead of schedule. Surprise, surprise. They're expected to award the contract in mid-May. And the Yebel North project, that's going through the pre-bid. It's called BCOES, but it's a cost update and other engineering and other metric update. But right now the schedule has that ready for bid end of May, possible contract award September 1st. But because of how late in the season that is for contract award, it may be weather dependent and other things, whether or not the construction will take place this year or early in the construction season in 2024. If the Corps can exceed their schedule and if Yebel South is an example of what they can do, and they can get out to bid prior to end of May, then maybe that construction will take place this year as opposed to next. One of the metrics that's pushing the Corps is they're pretty flush with cash, which I'll go over here, pretty flush with funding, which I'll go over in a minute. And so they don't want to carry over large sums of money from one fiscal year to the next. So they're motivated to get both projects out to bid and both projects constructed this year. And then on the Sac River West North Levee preliminary engineering and design, or just design, on the geotech side, and by the way, this is the segment that our member of the public was inquiring about. I think in the report it says segment 3 is they're continuing with it. I believe they've completed all of the geotechnical explorations for segment 3 as of yesterday. Paul can correct me if I'm wrong. And next up to work, we're working with the Corps to discuss the high ground. That's essentially from just north of the Tower Bridge. Let's say we're roughly where the CalSTRS building is, all the way south to the Stone Lock facility. That's all considered quote unquote high ground. And so we're going to have discussions with the Corps about what, if anything, needs to be done there in terms of levee improvements. And I'll just remind the board that since the Folsom dam upgrades have been implemented. There's new hydrology now along the Sacramento River system. And so the 200-year flood, which we designed to, now along the Sacramento River has much lower water surface elevations. And so the effects are not the same as they were. And so that, coupled with the high ground evaluation, may translate to no improvements needed, but that's what we're going to be exploring with the Corps.
Hey, Greg, will the West Sac bypass expansion, will that, when that's completed, will that also lower that 200-year?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And that's the future, they call it future with project condition. And that's something that we're going to make sure that we understand with the hydrology that they're using for our project to inform design. I believe it does include the future with project condition for the SAC bypass expansion.
Yeah.
And so, but we'll make sure to confirm that if that's the case. And then in surveying, the Corps requested that our consultant perform the bathymetry data collection in the river to inform possible erosion repairs. And so our consultant, that did require a contract amendment, which I executed under the authority granted me by the board for contingency. And so they are planning to start that in-water data collection this month. And then lastly, you may recall when we were doing the design of the Yolo Bypass East Levee that the Corps has and uses a process called a risk-informed design process. They bring what they affectionately refer to as a risk cadre, experts across the nation that work with the Corps to do a risk analysis, pre-project condition, and then looking at the recommended solutions from either current design, new data that's been collected, and or information that was gathered when they did the GRR. Anyway, so we're going to be doing a project-wide, it will be reach by reach, but over the course of the next 12 months or so, the risk cadre is going to take a look at all of our remaining reaches, the planned improvements, additional data that we've collected, and to help steer the Corps into to doing, proper risk-informed design, as well as some cost. There's a term where you do an engineering analysis for cost effectiveness, and I forget the term. I'm drawing a blank on that.
Cost benefit analysis or
kind of
something like that, or
value
benefit
engineering.
cost analysis, value engineering. Okay.
Value engineering. So that comes into play as well. There are, there's things that have occurred since the GRR was undertaken. For example, along the toe of the Deepwater Ship Channel East levee, behind Bridgeway Lakes. When part of that levee sloughed a few years ago, we ended up installing an underground piping system rather than using the drain, which was filling up, the tow drain, which was an integral part of the city's stormwater collection system. So with that tow drain no longer needed to convey stormwater, it can be filled in. And that with that drain filled in, there may no longer need to be a slurry wall as part of the solution for Deepwater Ship Channel East levee. So things like that will be evaluated as part of this risk-informed design effort. And so we're very hopeful that and data that we've collected around the Stone Lock facility, we think it's going to result in solutions that are going to be much less than what the Corps had anticipated. So looking forward to undertaking that effort with the Corps. Any questions on federal project implementation before I move on to budget and advocacy? Okie doke. So I reworked the section a little bit and added in what we're expecting with FY24. So in FY23, what I will say is we heard last week from the Corps, they've submitted their work plan which is a follow-on from the FY23 appropriations bill. Our project is not they did not request any additional funding for the WSAC project. That's our understanding. And like I had mentioned earlier, they're pretty flush with funds right now. Construction funding received to date, which would be FY22 and FY23 appropriations, totals just shy of 100 million. It's 97.6 million. If they were spending the money in the fiscal years in which they had received it, they would have to, that money would need to be out the door by September 30th of this year. Given that we have, on 2 small construction projects and design of Sac River North, there's no way they're going to be able to spend all that money. So there will be a fairly significant carryover, roughly half of those funds, let's say, if both projects are constructed this year. Maybe even 2/3 of that will be rolled over into the next fiscal year, FY24. And speaking of FY24, the president's budget is due to be released March 9, and we expect there to be a request in the president's budget for just shy of 58 million for the WSAC project. And so then we would be lobbying for that to be carried through with the FY24 appropriations bill, energy and water. And so that's where we are with FY24 funding. And then just to date, the Corps has received, including the pre-2022 construction funding. So we look at the design funding that the Corps received over the, sprinkled along a few fiscal years prior to FY22. The Corps has received a total of $101.5 million for our project to date. And
I'm sorry, Greg, are you done?
I am.
I just had a question. We just had a member of the public come over to talk about how just sand was put up on that levee. Why isn't there something with all that funding, something much more substantial done? I know it's not something WSAFCA does, but you mentioned the Corps. Do you have any understanding of that?
So all of our levees were constructed around the turn of the century or just after the turn of the century with dredging from the Sacramento River. So all of our levees, except until they are improved, are really a bunch of sand. So they drain really well, but they also have a fair amount of through seepage. And I think that's one of the reasons why you see such robust levees in many areas where they're super wide, because if they were the traditional, 20-foot wide on top or 30-foot wide on top, they may not have withstood the test of time. But the funding that the Corps has received is for specific projects to design and construct year by year. There's no way to design and construct the whole thing at once. So we're doing it in bite-sized increments, if you will. That particular stretch that the resident talked about is currently under design. That's Sac River North Levee. Segment or reaches 1 and 2, which are in the north, where the corp yards are the first to be designed and scheduled to go to construction for that reach. So the activities needed to improve that levee are being undertaken as we speak by the Corps. So if erosion protection needs to be completed over there to keep that sandy soil from sloughing off, that will likely be part of the solution. But we won't have the exact fix yet until the Corps gets farther into their design. So we'll be providing updates as the Corps we get to 30% design and so forth. So stay tuned for that.
Thank you, Greg.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions from the board?
Greg, you talked about the credit package and you mentioned 100 and is that just WSAFCA's request? Does the state also have a request or?
Well, we're doing it on behalf of the non-federal sponsors. So it's
okay. It's combined request.
That's correct.
Okay.
And so it ends up counting towards the non-federal sponsor cost share. And so
okay,
as of right now and for the foreseeable future, let's say the next couple of fiscal years, we anticipate the Corps only requesting the 5% cash contribution as they recognize our credit year by year. We're working with the Corps right now to have a thorough understanding and agreement, both sides nodding their heads up and down on how they're looking at credit. project costs and funding that they'll need from the non-federal sponsor. We want to have a spreadsheet, if you will, that we can share and back and forth periodically to say, yes, we're in agreement. And so there's no surprises. But so far, they've been very flexible in the terms at which they may request the 5% cash, quarterly, semi-annually, annual, once upfront. And so we appreciate them having that flexibility, and we also appreciate the state's willingness to cut the checks. Yeah. Now, we're continuing to do additional work in kind. So we've already amassed over $4 million from the Yola bypass design through these geotech and other design investigations that we're doing on Sac River North. We've exceeded $4 million in additional work in kind. So right now for all practical purposes, we're ahead of our required cost share. So we'll be
Very good.
down the road.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the report. Moving on, our next item was item 3B, director's comments. Is there any of the board wishing to have any comments at this time?
No.
Okay. Hearing none, we'll move to item 3C, which is adjournment, and hope to see you all in person next month. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.